My name is Michael Turner, and for 20 years, I carried a secret I swore I would never share. Not with my wife, not with my siblings, and certainly not with my son. But secrets have a way of surfacing at the worst possible time. And for me, that moment came on what should have been the happiest, warmest night of the year, Thanksgiving dinner. The house smelled of roasted turkey, garlic mashed potatoes, and my wife Emily's famous pumpkin pie. My younger sister, Linda, had driven in from Chicago, and my brother Robert brought his 2 daughters, filling the house with chatter and laughter. My son, Ethan, 13 years old and sharper than I ever gave him credit for, sat at the corner of the table, unusually quiet, watching everything. You know how every family has that one night that becomes the story everyone remembers, the one that gets told and retold for years? I didn't know it yet, but this Thanksgiving would be that night. And before I go deeper, if you're listening to my story right now, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because trust me, you don't want to miss what happened next. This wasn't just a dinner. It was the night everything I had buried for 2 decades clawed its way back to life. The evening began perfectly. Candles flickered, golden light dancing on the polished wood of our dining table. Glasses clinked as Robert raised a toast. To family, to health, and to traditions that keep us strong, he said, smiling broadly. Everyone joined in, their voices warm, their eyes bright. I tried to smile too, though the weight in my chest was heavier than I wanted to admit. I had played this role for years, the devoted father, the loving husband, the reliable brother. And most nights, it was enough. But deep down, I always feared the moment when someone would look at me too closely, ask the wrong question, or notice the cracks in the life I had so carefully built. Ethan, my son, was different this year. He wasn't joking with his cousins or sneaking extra pie crust from the kitchen. Instead, he kept glancing at me with that sharp, curious expression kids get when they've overheard something they don't fully understand but desperately want to. Every time our eyes met, I looked away, reaching for another serving spoon, forcing a laugh at someone's joke, pretending I didn't notice. "Dad," Ethan finally said, his voice soft but steady. "How come we never talk about your life before me?" The room fell silent. Forks hovered in midair. My wife froze, her napkin halfway to her lips. Linda's eyes widened ever so slightly, and Robert shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I chuckled nervously. "What do you mean, buddy?" I asked, buying time. But deep inside, my heart was racing. Let me pause here for a second. Imagine this. You've hidden something for 20 years. You've built your entire world on the hope that nobody will ever ask the one question that can bring it all crashing down. And then, out of nowhere, your own son, the person you love most in the world, looks you in the eye and asks it. That's what happened to me. And trust me, what came after that question changed my family forever. So if you're with me right now, do me a favor. Click that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because the storm that followed is something you'll want to hear in full. Back at the table, I tried to steady my breathing. The golden light that had made the room feel so cozy now felt like a spotlight. Every face was watching me, waiting. "Ethan," I began slowly. "Why do you ask?" He tilted his head, his young eyes piercing. "Because Aunt Linda said once you weren't always like this, that you had another life." What did she mean? Linda's face flushed crimson. She looked down at her plate, fiddling with her fork. Robert shot her a warning glance, but it was too late. The damage was done. Emily's hand slid across the table, resting on mine, her grip tight. She knew. Maybe not the full story, but enough to sense the storm beneath the surface. "Michael," she whispered, almost pleading. "You don't have to." But I did. Ethan's eyes demanded it. He wasn't a little boy anymore who could be distracted with a story about football or a promise of ice cream. He wanted the truth, and whether I liked it or not, the truth was clawing its way out. As I looked around that table, at my siblings, at Emily, at Ethan, I felt 20 years collapse into a single moment. Memories I had buried so deep came rushing back. The betrayal, the choices I made, the consequences I escaped but never outran. This wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about what kind of father I wanted to be. Did I want Ethan to grow up believing lies? Or did I finally have the courage to show him who I really was? even if it shattered the image he had of me? I took a long breath, my throat dry. Ethan, I said, my voice shaking. There are things about my past, things I've kept from you. Things I thought were better left unsaid. But maybe it's time you knew. The silence at the table was deafening. Even the candles seemed to burn lower. And with that, the night took a turn none of us were ready for. This was the beginning. The moment my son's innocent curiosity pulled the thread that unraveled 2 decades of silence. By the end of that dinner, nothing would be the same. So stay with me, because in the next part, I'll tell you exactly what happened when I opened my mouth and let 20 years of secrets finally see the light. And again, if you don't want to miss it, make sure you hit subscribe, because trust me, the confession that followed was darker than anyone at that table ever imagined. The moment the words left Ethan's lips, the room transformed. Dad, why don't we ever talk about your life before me? At first, it sounded almost harmless, like the innocent curiosity of a boy who had grown old enough to wonder about the stories his father never told. But there was something in his tone, something deliberate, something piercing, that made my stomach drop. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. Across the table, Emily's face went pale. Robert cleared his throat awkwardly, pretending to adjust his napkin, while Linda froze, her wine glass trembling slightly in her hand. The silence was suffocating. Even the soft crackle of the fireplace seemed to hush itself. Ethan, I said slowly, my throat dry. What do you mean? He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table, his gaze locked on mine. 13 years old, but in that moment, he looked far older, like he had stepped out of childhood and into a place where truths demand answers. I heard Aunt Linda, he said, glancing briefly at her. Talking once. She said you weren't always like this. That something happened. Why don't we ever talk about it? Linda's face flushed crimson. She looked away, staring at the gravy boat, like it was her lifeline. Robert shot her a sharp look, his jaw tightening. I didn't. Linda began, her voice trembling. Ethan, I didn't mean. But Ethan cut her off. You did. You said Dad's past was different. That he was a different person. What did you mean? My chest tightened. It felt like the walls were closing in. I could see the curiosity in Ethan's eyes, but also the confusion, the desperation of a boy trying to fit together puzzle pieces that never seemed to align. Now let me pause right here, because if you've ever had a secret so heavy that one innocent question could expose it, you know the feeling. The air goes thin, your pulse pounds, and the world narrows to that one moment. And if you're following this story, don't forget to hit subscribe, because what unfolded after this question wasn't just shocking, it was devastating. You'll want to stay for every detail. Back at the table, I tried to breathe, but every breath felt shallow. Ethan, I said carefully, sometimes people misunderstand. Sometimes they remember things differently than they really were. It was a weak attempt, and Ethan wasn't buying it. Then tell me, he pressed. What really happened? Emily reached for my hand under the table, squeezing tightly. Her nails dug into my skin, her silent plea clear. Don't do this. Not here. Not now. But it was too late. The tension spread like wildfire. My nieces, sensing the heaviness, stopped laughing. Robert cleared his throat again, his face flushed with frustration. Ethan, maybe this isn't the right time. No. Ethan interrupted, his voice steady, louder now. It is. Why can't I know about my own father's life? Everyone else here seems to know something. Why don't I? The words hung in the air like a verdict. Linda finally broke. Michael, she whispered, her voice sharp with guilt. He deserves to know. He's not a little boy anymore. Linda, Robert snapped, his eyes blazing. This isn't your place. But the damage was already done. Ethan's eyes widened, hope and dread battling inside them. So there is something, he said. Something real. What is it, Dad? I felt the weight of 2 decades pressing down on me. Every lie, every deflection, every forced smile at family gatherings, it all converged into this moment. My son's trust was on the line. And yet, fear anchored me to my chair. If I told him the truth, would he still see me as his father? Or would he see me as the man I used to be? The man I had tried so hard to erase? The silence stretched on, unbearable. Emily's voice broke through it, soft but trembling. Ethan, sweetheart, sometimes parents make mistakes. Big mistakes. Mistakes they don't ever want their children to carry. Ethan's jaw clenched. So it's true. He turned back to me, his eyes shimmering. You did something, didn't you? I couldn't speak. Not yet. My throat felt locked, as if every word I wanted to say was trapped under 20 years of shame. Ethan's lip quivered. Why didn't you trust me? Why didn't you think I could handle it? The room spun. I wanted to reach across the table, to pull him into my arms and tell him everything, but my body wouldn't move. All I could do was sit there as my son's innocence cracked before my eyes. Listen, if you're still here with me, you can probably feel the weight of this moment. This wasn't just about one question. This was about truth colliding with lies, about a boy seeing his father not as a hero, but as a man with shadows. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around for what came next. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because the next part of this story is where the past finally explodes into the present. That night, Thanksgiving dinner stopped being about turkey and pumpkin pie. It became a courtroom, and I was the one on trial. Ethan sat there, his young hands clenched into fists, his eyes locked on me. Dad, he said, his voice breaking, please. I just want to know who you really are. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. The truth was no longer mine to protect. It belonged to him now. The room was frozen. Every breath, every heartbeat, every unspoken word, it all waited on me. And as I opened my mouth to speak, I knew nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. The silence at the table stretched like a rope pulled too tight, ready to snap. My son's question had cracked open a door I had kept sealed for 20 years, and now every eye in the room demanded I walk through it. I tried to steady my breathing, but my chest felt heavy, like I was drowning in a sea of memories I had fought to bury. Ethan's eyes, wide, pleading, unrelenting, were the anchor pulling me down. Dad, he whispered again. Please, just tell me the truth. Emily's hand clutched mine beneath the table, trembling. Robert's jaw was set in stone, while Linda avoided my gaze. Shame etched across her face. My nieces fidgeted uncomfortably, sensing that something much bigger than a family argument was unfolding. I closed my eyes, and in that instant, I was no longer in my warm dining room. I was back in a life I had sworn to forget. 20 years ago, I wasn't Michael Turner, the devoted husband and proud father sitting at this table. Back then, I was a different man altogether, a man chasing success, a man who believed money and power could solve everything. I worked in finance, climbing the ladder faster than most, but cutting corners along the way. Deals that looked shiny on the outside, but hid right underneath. People warned me, Linda especially, that the path I was on would catch up with me. But I didn't listen. I thought I was invincible. And then came the deal that destroyed everything. I partnered with a man named Anthony Graves, a charming smooth talker who promised wealth beyond anything I dreamed of. Together, we poured millions into an investment scheme that looked flawless on paper. I convinced colleagues, even family friends, to trust me. I shook hands, smiled confidently, and assured them their futures were safe in my hands. But Anthony wasn't who he seemed. He siphoned money, manipulated documents, and when the whole scheme collapsed, he vanished, leaving me standing in the wreckage. People lost everything. Families were ruined. Trust was shattered. And though I avoided prison by the thinnest margin, thanks to evidence that pinned most of it on Anthony, the stain on my soul never washed away. That was my secret. That was the man I used to be. Back at the table, I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. Ethan, I said, my voice cracking. The truth is, before you were born, I made choices that hurt people. Choices I can never undo. His eyes narrowed. What kind of choices? Linda finally looked up, her voice sharp. Michael, don't sugarcoat it. He deserves the truth. I nodded, shame tightening around my throat. I got involved with the wrong people. I thought I was building a future for myself, for all of us. But it was a lie. I lost everything. Friends, family, respect. I ruined lives, Ethan. And when it all came crashing down, I buried it. I buried it so deep I prayed you'd never know. The table was silent. Only the faint crackle of the fireplace filled the room. Emily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. You told me. You told me it was just business gone bad. It was more than that, I admitted, my voice shaking. It was betrayal, greed, and cowardice. I let someone else take the fall, and I rebuilt my life in silence. Ethan's face twisted with hurt. So you've been lying all this time. I thought I was protecting you, I said desperately. I thought if I kept it buried, you'd never have to see the man I used to be. Now let me pause here, because if you've ever carried guilt this heavy, you know it doesn't go away. It festers, and when the truth finally claws its way out, it tears everything apart. If you're still with me, don't forget to hit subscribe, because the storm you're about to hear, the explosion of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak, was the moment everything in my family shattered. Ethan pushed his chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. All those times I asked you about your past, he said, his voice trembling. You lied to my face. I did, I admitted, and I hate myself for it. Every day. He shook his head, tears brimming in his eyes. I looked up to you. I thought you were perfect. His voice broke on the last word. Ethan, I pleaded, reaching across the table. I'm not perfect. I never was. I'm just a man who made terrible mistakes. Robert's fist slammed against the table, rattling the silverware. You're damn right you did. Do you know what people said about this family because of you? Do you know the shame you dragged us through? Robert, Emily snapped, her voice sharp with anger. This isn't the time. No, Robert barked. It is the time. He wants the truth. There it is. Michael ruined lives, and he ran. And we, his family, paid for it in whispers and stares for years. Ethan's gaze darted between us, his world crumbling piece by piece. Linda reached across the table, her voice gentler. Ethan, your father. He's not the man he was back then. He's changed. But Ethan's eyes never left mine. Have you? He asked quietly. Or are you just hiding better? The question cut deeper than any accusation. In that moment, I realized the cost of silence. I had built my life on the hope that hiding the truth would protect my son. But the reality was cruel. Secrets don't protect, they destroy. And now, with every word, I could feel 20 years of silence unraveling into chaos. The truth was out, and the fallout had only just begun. The room felt like a courtroom, and I was the man on trial. My son, my wife, my siblings, all of them sat in judgment, their silence heavier than any words. My heart pounded so loudly I swore it echoed against the walls. Ethan's question still lingered in the air. Have you really changed, or are you just hiding better? For 20 years, I had practiced silence, perfecting the art of dodging the truth. But in that moment, I realized silence wasn't saving me anymore. It was destroying me. I drew in a shaky breath. Ethan, I began, my voice trembling. There's more I need to tell you. More than I ever wanted to admit to anyone. Emily gripped my arm. Michael, she whispered urgently. Don't. Not like this. Not here. But her plea couldn't stop me. My son deserved the truth, no matter how much it broke him, or me. I looked across the table, my eyes meeting Ethan's. The truth is, I didn't just make mistakes in business. I betrayed people. People who trusted me with their savings, their futures. And when everything collapsed, my voice cracked. I let someone else take the blame. I let him disappear while I stayed behind and pretended to be innocent. The words hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Ethan's lips parted, his young face etched with disbelief. You let someone else take the fall. You mean you could have stopped it? Tears burned my eyes. Yes, but I didn't. I was too scared, too selfish. Robert's fist slammed against the table, rattling the dishes. You're damn right you were selfish. Do you even realize what people thought of us? What they thought of me? Carrying your last name while you hid behind lies. Linda flinched at his words, but spoke softly. Robert, enough. This isn't about us, it's about Ethan. But Ethan's gaze never left me. So everything I thought I knew about you, it was a lie? Now let me pause here for just a second, because this was the moment my world cracked open. If you're still listening to my story, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happened after this confession wasn't just shocking. It was the kind of moment that changes a family forever. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. Back at the table, Emily wiped at her tears. Michael, all these years, I defended you. I told Ethan you were a good man. A man who worked hard and provided for us. And now you're telling me I didn't even know my own husband. Her voice shattered me more than Robert's rage or Linda's guilt. I am a good man now, I said desperately. I've worked every day to become better, to leave that life behind. But the truth was never gone. It was always here, just waiting to surface. Ethan's eyes glistened. So why tell me now? Why tonight? Because you asked, I said simply. Because I saw the look in your eyes, and I realized I couldn't lie to you anymore. You deserve to know who your father really is. Not the version I wanted you to see. The real me. The room was still, every breath fragile. Robert broke the silence, his voice sharp. Do you even know the damage you did? People lost homes, Michael. They lost everything. And you sit here now with your house, your family, your second chance. He stopped, choking on his anger. I know, I whispered, and I live with it every day. Every night when I close my eyes, I see their faces. I hear their voices. That's why I've spent 20 years working to rebuild. Not just for myself, but for them. It doesn't erase what I did, but it's all I can do. Ethan swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can forgive you. The words pierced deeper than any accusation. I don't deserve your forgiveness, I admitted. But I hope, someday, you'll see that I'm trying. That the man sitting here tonight isn't the same man who made those choices 20 years ago. Emily pushed her chair back, tears streaking her cheeks. I need a moment, she whispered, standing and leaving the room. The sound of her footsteps on the stairs echoed like a drumbeat in my chest. Ethan sat frozen, his hands clenched into fists. I don't know what to think, he said. Part of me hates you for what you did. But part of me still sees my dad. The dad who taught me how to ride a bike, who never missed a game, who stayed up with me when I was sick. His voice cracked. Which one is real? They both are, I said softly. I was a man who made terrible mistakes, and I'm a father who loves you more than anything. Those truths exist together. Tears spilled down his cheeks, and I wanted nothing more than to hold him. But I didn't move, not yet. He needed space to decide whether I was still worthy of being his father. Linda reached across the table, placing a hand gently over Ethan's. Your dad's past is ugly, yes, but people can change. I've seen it in him. The man you know now, the man who shows up for you every single day. That man is real. Ethan's gaze flicked from her to me, searching for something, anything, that would make sense of the chaos unraveling inside him. I don't know if I believe that yet, he whispered. And in that moment, I accepted the hardest truth of all. No confession, no apology. No explanation could fix what I had broken. Only time could. That night, my confession hung over the table like a storm cloud. It fractured bonds, it ignited anger, and it broke hearts. But it also did something else. It ripped away the last of my lies. For the first time in 20 years, I was no longer hiding. And though the fallout was devastating, a part of me felt free. The dining table looked like a battlefield after the war. The turkey sat untouched, mashed potatoes growing cold, and the cranberry sauce glistened under the harsh light, but no one cared. The feast that was meant to bring us together had turned into a trial, a confession, and now silence. Michael sat slumped in his chair, his face pale, his hands trembling slightly as though the weight of 20 years had just been dropped back onto his shoulders. Across from him, Ethan's eyes were red from tears, locked on the table instead of his father. Robert broke the silence first, his voice bitter. So what now, Michael? You just say sorry, and we all move on. Is that how it works? Michael raised his head slowly. No, nothing about this is that simple. I don't expect any of you to move on tonight. Or tomorrow. Maybe not ever. Emily reappeared from the hallway, her face still damp from crying. She didn't sit down. She stood near the wall, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Her distance said more than her words ever could. Ethan finally spoke, his voice quiet but sharp. "All my life, I thought you were my role model, the one man I could look up to. And now, I don't even know who you are." Michael flinched as though the words were knives. "I'm still your dad, Ethan. A broken one, yes. But I've never stopped loving you." "Love?" Ethan's eyes flicked up, filled with pain. "How can you say you loved me when you couldn't even be honest with me? You kept this from me my whole life. Every bedtime story, every birthday, every time you told me to do the right thing. Was that all a lie too?" Michael's breath caught. "No. Those moments were real. They were the truest parts of me. But I was a coward, and cowards hide." Now, let me pause here for just a second, because this is the kind of moment that shatters a family. The kind of truth no one expects to face at a Thanksgiving table. If you're still with me, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. The fallout from this night wasn't just emotional. It reshaped every relationship I had. And what happened next might just make you question how well you know the people sitting across from your own dinner table. Back at the table, Linda reached out to Ethan, her voice gentle. "Sweetheart, your dad made terrible mistakes, yes. But he's standing here now, owning them. That counts for something." Robert scoffed. "Counts for something? Don't romanticize it, Linda. The man wrecked lives. Families were ruined while he built a new one for himself. Don't sit here and make him sound noble for finally spitting out the truth." Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "You're right. I don't deserve nobility. I don't deserve forgiveness. But maybe I can deserve a chance to do better now that the lies are gone." Emily finally stepped closer, her eyes searching Michael's face. "Do you even know what you've done to Ethan? To us? You've turned our home into a house built on secrets. Do you think saying it out loud makes it any less broken?" Michael shook his head. "No, but it's the only way forward. Truth, no matter how painful, is the foundation for healing, even if it takes years." Ethan pushed his chair back, the screech echoing in the room. He stood, his fists clenched at his sides. "I don't know if I can live with this. I don't know if I want to." His chest rose and fell rapidly. Michael rose too, though his legs wobbled. "Ethan, please. I know I don't deserve it, but give me the chance to prove I can be better. Not with words. Words are cheap, but with actions. Let me earn back even a fraction of your trust." For a long moment, Ethan just stared at him. His eyes were full of rage, grief, and something Michael couldn't bear to name, disappointment. Finally, Ethan whispered, "You broke me tonight." The words landed like a hammer. Michael's knees nearly buckled. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying to rebuild what I broke," he said, his voice cracking. The family sat in silence. Even Robert, who had barked accusations all night, fell quiet. The storm had passed, but the wreckage remained. Dinner was abandoned. Plates sat half-eaten, untouched. One by one, chairs scraped back, footsteps echoed, doors closed. Until it was just Michael and the cold, empty table. He sat there for hours, staring at the candles as they burned down to wax puddles. His reflection in the window looked like a stranger, hollow, exhausted, broken. When Emily finally returned to the room, she didn't speak. She simply placed a blanket over his shoulders and walked away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't abandonment either. Later that night, Michael pushed open Ethan's door. The boy lay in bed, his back turned, his breathing uneven. Michael stood in the doorway, unsure if he had the right to enter. "Ethan," he whispered, his voice trembling, "I know you don't believe me right now. I know you see me as a liar, maybe even a monster. But I swear to you, every good memory we have together was real. And I'll do whatever it takes to give you more of those, even if it takes the rest of my life." There was no answer, just silence. Michael closed the door softly, a man carrying the weight of his own ruin. And that's how Thanksgiving ended. Not with laughter or gratitude, but with a truth that shattered the very foundation of a family. But here's the haunting part. Secrets don't just disappear once spoken. They linger, they poison, they reshape the people who hear them. The aftermath of my confession wasn't a clean break. It was the start of a long, painful journey. Whether my family would ever forgive me, I didn't know. But for the first time in 20 years, I finally stopped running.